Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another neglected gem. Today's neglected gem is After Hours by Martin Scorsese from 1985. Now, I don't know how neglected After Hours really is, but for me it's probably my fourth or fifth favourite Scorsese. As you may or may not know, I think a lot of Scorsese's classic films haven't really aged that well. I think Taxi Driver's the one from that kind of 70s, early 80s that has kind of aged the best. Again, for those that don't know, I'm one of those strange people who thinks The Age of Innocence is Scorsese's best film, and it's my favourite Scorsese. And Kind of Comedy might be his second best film. Again, that's just me. So I don't know how neglected After Hours is. This is Scorsese's buffet foire, pretty much. So this was made in 1985. He had started to get together The Last Temptation of Christ in 1983, but that fell through. Obviously, he would make that in 1987 or 1988. So he was in kind of a bad place, and also upset that Last Temptation of Christ fell through. And Griffin Dunne and Amy Robinson, who was in Mean Streets, they had got this script together, and they kind of showed it to Scorsese, but he was caught up in Temptation of Christ at the time. So they actually approached this young artist called Tim Burton. I don't know whether you've heard of Tim Burton or not. So he was actually on board to do it, but then Last Temptation of Christ fell through, and Scorsese was kind of looking for something to try and lift himself out of the doldrums. So he contacted Dunn and Robinson again to say, I'd still quite like to do this After Hours. So Tim Burton was told about this, and Tim Burton, according to Griffin Dunne, quite graciously said, if Scorsese wants to do it, I'm not going to stand in his way. Which was awfully nice of Tim Burton at the time. So Scorsese came on board. They did all night shoots, and it's a kind of personal film to Scorsese. I think you can see a lot of Scorsese at the time in Griffin Dunne's character, because like I said, he wasn't in a great space at that time. Actually, this is a Blu-ray of After Hours. This is one of these films that was on my Please Make a Blu-ray list for quite a while. So this is a Spanish Blu-ray. It is multi-region though. It is A, B and C. It has deleted scenes. It has a making of, which is really interesting. They talk about the ending of the film because they didn't really know how to end it, and Scorsese showed the film to Spielberg and De Palma, and there was many versions of how the film would end, one of which was Griffin Dunne going to the moon. Another one was Griffin Dunne going into a woman's womb and then being birthed out on a highway somewhere, covered in afterbirth. But apparently Michael Powell told Scorsese how to end the film, and despite Scorsese not really liking the idea originally, a few weeks later they actually made the ending that Michael Powell has suggested how to end the film, which I'm also not going to tell you. You'll have to watch the film if you haven't seen it before to find out. Michael Powell basically told them how to end the film. If you're unsure, you might as well go to the best and ask Michael Powell if he's available, obviously. So I'll actually talk about the film itself as opposed to all that nonsense that I've just spouted. Like I say, it's Scorsese's Buffet Foire. It's the one he did after the King of Comedy. It's, when people say black comedies, this is more an anxiety comedy. We're introduced to Griffin Dunne at the start, who seems to be in a boring IT job. To be fair, I think one of the reasons After Hours stands up so well is it's not dated, apart from the kind of IT bit at the start when he's teaching somebody about library and databases. Obviously the technology's moved on, but nothing really else in the film has dated since 1985, just because it is this strange, weird universe all of its own. So he's sitting in a coffee shop. Rosanna Arquette makes a comment about the book he's reading, and they chat, and then she seems to be slightly interesting and slightly odd, and she gives him her number that she's sharing with a sculptor, if he ever wants a bagel and cream cheese paperweight. So he goes home, it's 11:30 at night, and he decides to phone to see if he can get a cream cheese bagel paperweight, under the guise of maybe he'll strike it lucky with Rosanna Arquette. He goes in a taxi, his $20 flies out the window, so he's only got 97 cents to his name, and he turns up in this loft where Linda Fiorentina is doing a paper mache sculpture of what kind of looks almost like the guy from Munchie's The Scream, or The Shriek, as Griffin Dunne's character incorrectly calls it and is corrected. And she's a little bit strange, as are all the people that he meets in this very long night. Marcy, Rosanna Arquette's character, comes back. They go into her room. She kind of is nice to him, is odd to him. There's strange dynamics going on. And then they go out, and various misunderstandings, cross purposes happen. People die, there's robberies going on. Griffin Dunne gets accused of things. Every person he meets seems to be okay in the surface, but there's something else going underneath. The film itself, I think, is Scorsese kind of also questioning what art is. You know, characters talk about what's art. Cheech and Chong are in it as robbers, and they have debates about what art is. It does have an amazing cast with Arquette and Fiorentina. There's John Hurd, Victor Argo, Terry Garr, Verna Bloom, Catherine O'Hara. But they're all these little strange people, slightly off kind of colour characters. Will Patton turns up as a character called Horse, who seems to be into S&M with Fiorentina's character. And Scorsese shoots it. Michael Bauhaus shot it. Howard Shore did the music, interestingly enough, not on a Cronenberg film. And the way Scorsese uses dollies, I mean, the first shot of the film is almost like a whip dolly into Griffin Dunne. He does lots of kind of dollies in real close to people. There's the famous falling keys, which they originally shot with a bit of wood with a hole in it, and the camera's on a bungee from the top of the building and almost killed Griffin Dunne. Everything's threatening. The way Scorsese has the camera lurking and swooping in, and very low tracks, and lots of kind of dollies into people's faces. It's a very uncomfortable watch. Again, you can see why it wasn't successful. You can see why people either like it or don't like it. As Amy Robinson says, people that they showed the script to either laughed at it or just didn't want anything to do with it. Because there is a genuine sense of anxiety. Griffin Dunne's character, Paul, he's not perhaps the most likeable character. You're kind of on his side, but at times he can also be really abrasive and difficult, which later on in the film is understandable with the stuff that happens to him. But there is a scene where you could kind of question, well, why is he that abrasive? Obviously it's to move the story on, but so that might not work kind of organically. But there's all the little details, the conversations about scars and cream for burns. There's a book of Burns victims' photos. There's the link between John Hurd's keychain and Rosanna Arquette's tattoo. Rosanna Arquette tells this story of how she was pretty much sexually assaulted for 6 hours by this guy who broke into her apartment. As she says, she slept through most of it. It's that kind of... We see later there's a wee newspaper article about a mob tearing a man limb from limb. Terry Garr's character, who's a waitress in John Hurd's bar called the Terminal Bar, she has these mouse traps round her window, and they all have little spotlights on them, and at some point in the film a mouse does get caught. It's just these little dark, odd, absurdist touches. So you can tell Scorsese wasn't in the best frame of mind. Obviously it was the script, but the actual visuals and how Scorsese uses the camera almost like a weapon. You have the odd story again that Rosanna Arquette's character says about her ex-husband, who was a huge Wizard of Oz fan, and at the point of ecstasy he would shout, "Surrender, Dorothy." Again, it's just these odd little details. There's an overflowing toilet. There's really funny bathroom graffiti, but which is also really dark and strange. There's a jukebox which at one point plays a song which seems to be the female narrator telling of the time her family home was set on fire, and I think the title of the song is that all there is. The kind of S&M bar that Griffin Dunne has to hunt a couple of characters down at one point is Club Berlin, and the bouncer, I'm pretty sure the conversation with the bouncer is pretty much a riff on Kafka's The Trial. If you've seen Orson Welles' 1961 version of The Trial, with that pin animation at the intro about the guard at the door of the law, not letting the guy in and he has to wait. That conversation with the bouncer in the way into Club Berlin is pretty much a riff on The Trial, I think, which only kind of got watching it again. Obviously it was clearer because it was in Blu-ray, so obviously got that reference, I think. So he just goes from one kind of disaster, one seemingly innocuous relationship, not relationship, but kind of meeting, to another, and the dominoes just continue to tip over and everything continues to build against him, as he just has went down to Soho on the chance to, I don't know, meet this girl and see what happens. It just escalates as he continues to have the night from hell, until it is finally resolved with the help of Michael Powell. It's just a wonderful film, but again, not everybody's going to like it. But I think it speaks a lot to where Scorsese was at the time. And as Amy Robinson says, it kind of reinvigorated Scorsese. I mean, after this he would do The Colour of Money, and then he would do The Last Temptation of Christ, so he got to Christ eventually. But, you know, if The Last Temptation of Christ hadn't fallen through in 83, we might never have After Hours, which I would think is a shame. Not everybody would agree with that, but I think it's a shame. And again, just so happy to have found this Spanish Blu-ray, because like I said, it was on, you know, when I did those videos of films that need a Blu-ray release, I'm sure After Hours was on it at some point. And again, the beauty of this one is region A, B and C. And again, it does play in English. The making of has Spanish subtitles that you can't get rid of, but I mean, that's not really an issue. So it's a really nice print. I mean, it was never, you know, the most beautiful film in the world because it's shot all at night, but it's really claustrophobic, but you do get to see what's in the dark. So the kind of medium shots of, you know, the mouse traps in Terry Garr's house as a woman who's trapped in the 50s. The kind of medium shots of them are a lot sharper, and you can actually see in detail the mouse traps. So that's a little look back at After Hours. Again, if you like the film, I would recommend trying to get your hands on a Spanish Blu-ray. Obviously, now that I've bought a Spanish Blu-ray, Arrow will announce they're releasing a special edition of After Hours, or something like that. Somebody will. But that's a small price to pay. So thanks so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you think of After Hours, or whether it's a neglected gem, or it's not neglected enough. And hopefully you'll join me again for more videos. This is Solitude Ronin from Solitude Ronin Films, saying farewell.